The sinking of the Titanic is one of the most famous maritime disasters in history. The luxurious British passenger liner was making its maiden voyage from Southampton, England to New York City when it struck an iceberg in the North Atlantic Ocean on April 14, 1912. More than 1,500 people, including passengers and crew, died in the disaster, making it one of the deadliest peacetime maritime disasters in history. The Titanic was built by the White Star Line, a British shipping company, and was intended to be one of the most luxurious and technologically advanced ships of its time. The ship was designed to be unsinkable, with a double bottom and 15 watertight compartments that could be sealed off in case of a breach. The Titanic set sail on its maiden voyage on April 10, 1912, from Southampton, England, with stops in Cherbourg, France, and Queenstown, Ireland, before heading across the Atlantic to New York City. The ship was carrying more than 2,200 passengers and crew, including some of the wealthiest and most prominent people of the time. The first-class passengers included businessmen, politicians, and celebrities, while the third-class passengers were primarily immigrants seeking a new life in America. On the night of April 14, 1912, the Titanic was sailing through the North Atlantic when it struck an iceberg at around 11:40 p.m. The iceberg tore a gash in the ship's hull and caused serious damage to several of the watertight compartments. At first, the crew and passengers did not fully realize the severity of the situation. Many believed that the Titanic was unsinkable and that the damage could be repaired. However, as the water began to flood into the lower compartments, it became clear that the ship was in grave danger. The crew worked frantically to try to contain the damage and pump out the water, but it was too late. The Titanic began to list to one side as the water continued to flood in, and soon the ship was sinking. The crew began to load the lifeboats, but there were not enough for all the passengers and crew. Women and children were given priority, and many of the lifeboats were not filled to capacity. As the Titanic sank, the passengers and crew were faced with a harrowing struggle for survival. Many jumped into the freezing water, which was only 28 degrees Fahrenheit, 2 Celsius, and tried to swim to the lifeboats or debris from the sinking ship. Others were trapped on the ship or were unable to make it to the lifeboats in time. The Titanic sent out distress signals, and nearby ships responded to the call for help. The Carpathia, a Cunard line ship, arrived on the scene about 2 hours after the sinking and rescued more than 700 survivors. In the aftermath of the disaster, there was shock and disbelief around the world. The sinking of the Titanic was seen as a tragedy of epic proportions, and the loss of life was a devastating blow to families and communities. There were also many questions about how such a tragedy could have happened. The public and the media demanded answers, and there were calls for an investigation into the cause of the sinking. The British government appointed a special commission to investigate the disaster, and the resulting report was highly critical of the White Star Line and its management of the Titanic. The report found that the ship was not adequately equipped with lifeboats, that the crew had not been properly trained in emergency procedures, and that the ship's speed had not been reduced in the face of ice warning.